Radio 1 FM 90.
A warm welcome indeed. You're listening to Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond Kizito. On Spectrum tonight, religious leaders seek a new direction for the country. What direction do they want the country to take? And are their views likely to be taken on by government and the general public? Religious leaders are asking Ugandan political leaders to seek a new direction for the country, away from the challenges that the country is facing today. In their Christmas sermons, religious leaders indicated the challenges that include corruption, economic hardships, bloody demonstrations, human rights abuses, crime, especially murder, mistreatment of political opponents, and tribalism, among others, have caused a lot of fear and frustration among Ugandans. They suggest that political leaders must seek a fresh direction for the country with lasting solutions to these challenges. At the All Saints Cathedral, the Archbishop of the Church of Uganda, His Grace Henry Lugolobi, spoke tough against corruption and challenged political leaders to seek God's intervention to avoid traps. At the St. Paul Cathedral in Namirembe, Bishop Wilberforce Chichel indicated that 2011 had been a year of frustration, demonstrations, accusations and counter-accusations, murder and all sorts of injustices, and called for national repentance. The prelate indicated that the despair among Ugandans has caused many to wonder who will lead this country to a better future. At the Rubaga Catholic Cathedral, a message by His Grace Dr. Cyprian Kizito called for the promotion of peace, justice and reconciliation in order to address what he calls social rot. He said, and I quote, "If people continue to pursue their own interest, then our country will continue to fall apart. There is a public outcry of dissatisfaction where the weak are oppressed socially, morally and politically. The few who have such powers in their hands may not seem to be sensitive to the plight of the majority who seem to be craving for their help, but in vain." End of quote. These messages were passed on direct to the congregation, which included government representatives, who were then asked to pass it on to the president, who was hosting his Rwandan counterpart, Major General Paul Kagame, at his Rachitra home. So tonight we reflect on the messages from religious leaders to try and understand what kind of direction they want to see the country take. Our guests tonight, Ambassador Harold Acemah, political scientist and consultant, as well as a retired diplomat. You're most welcome, Ambassador Acemah.
Thank you, Edmond.
We're also joined by Mr. Robert Lugolobi, Executive Director of Transparency International, the Ugandan chapter. You're most welcome, Mr. Lugolobi.
Thank you, moderator.
What, in your view, Mr. Lugolobi, was the gist of the religious leaders' messages over Christmas?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think what was emphasized, although in many words, was the misery Ugandans have gone through or are going through, caused by mismanagement of public resources and some kind of injustices, economic injustices that has been poured on Ugandans, to the extent that people are actually in pain, while a section of very few people who have access to public resources are lavishly living at the expense of the poor, who are the masses. I think that's what was coming out very vividly, that we need to turn the clock and then work on such issues that have brought people to have that big divide between those who are having, but not having because they are hardworking, but they are having because of their position they are holding, and they have successfully dipped their hand into the coffers of the nation to sustain their lavish lifestyle.
All right, let's take a broader view. In the past, the country was said to be suffering political injustices. There was what some people perceived to have been a liberation in 1986 when the NRM came to power. But now you're talking about economic injustices. You're saying if this frontier was broken, this country would be a better country. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But also we want to remind you that Uganda has gotten so many so-called liberations. Everybody comes with liberation, we are liberated, but they end up in circles, because liberation has to be sustainable, has to be having a direction. At the end of the day, it's not a liberation of a few to oppress the rest, or changing of the officers from a section to another section, but that liberation. So I always remind people that we have celebrated, first personally, I am not too young and not too old, but I've celebrated in 1979. I was a kid. We also had in 1985. Then 1986, then those who lived in 1971, 1966, all those are liberation that never worked. the thing is, we really need Ugandans to realize that this is our country and we have a stake in it. So the few people who always take away and take upon themselves to liberate this country, they end up actually messing up, and we become a vicious cycle of liberations.
Well, Ugandans danced in the streets when Idi Amin took power in January 1971. They did the same thing 8 years later. Then the cycle continued. Ambassador Acemah, were the religious leaders speaking according to the feelings of the people?
Well, thank you very much. Edmond, 2001 has been a very challenging...
2011.
2011.
Yes.
2011 has been a very challenging and trying year for Uganda, for Africa, and I think for the entire world. And I want to thank the Archbishop of the Church of Uganda, His Grace Henry Lugolobi, the Archbishop of Rubaga, Dr. Cyprian Kizito Luanga, the Bishop of Namirembe, the Right Reverend Wilberforce Kitio Lualira, for their very, very important and pertinent messages. I think the messages speak for themselves. And unlike my fellow panelists here, I think the messages are more than just expressing misery. In fact, I want to thank the bishops for finally playing what I would call their prophetic role. You see, by interesting coincidence, my father is a clergy. My father was a reverend, so I little grew up in church. And one of the roles of the clergy is to speak for the poor, for the weak, for the neglected, who are the majority in all societies. If you look at the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, Micah, they always spoke to power. They spoke for the poor, for the downtrodden, for the people you meet on the streets, for the homeless, for the people who are taken for granted, people who have lost their dignity, people whom you mentioned, the people who are those who allegedly liberate them, come and lord it over them. If I may just quote what Archbishop Cyprian Luanga said in his statement. Let me just quote. He said some of the challenges that Uganda faced this year were loss of family value in society, increasing poverty caused by the rise of prices for almost all commodities, the world economic recession which affects us, corruption and abuse of office and land grabbing, road carnage is one of the tragedies. In fact, it's like we have got a war going on our roads. Domestic violence, which is a tragedy. This is where we are all here men. I wish I had been gender sensitive.
Yes, go on.
I think this is where men are guilty. Domestic violence,
right,
which is rampant in today's society. A lot of it is because of the misery you talked about. Sometimes people who have suffered go and unleash their anger on the wrong people.
Right.
You go home and you think your wife caused your problems, when in fact your problem was caused by your liberators. Then bills, I'm just continuing to quote Archbishop Cyprian Luanga. Bills which are tabled before Parliament and end up diluting the protection of the fundamental human rights and freedoms of Ugandans, and yet the protection of these rights should always direct our legislators in all the bills they table and legislate. So it's a litany of things. And Archbishop Henry Lugolobi said similar things. Bishop Wilberforce Kitio said more similar. I'm sure many other church leaders have come to express on behalf of Ugandans. You see, when you and me, maybe at least we have got the opportunity to talk on it, but many Ugandans are voiceless. So the role of the clergyman, and especially the bishops, is to speak for this silent majority. And I want to thank them for what they've done. And I hope this message has gone to the people for whom it is first and foremost intended. The leadership of this country, the members of parliament, the ministers, the prime minister, the vice president, the president. And this is a God-fearing country. Our national motto is what? For God and my country. Many of the leaders of this country are Christians. In fact, I saw many of them in the church on Christmas Day. And I'm sure they'll be there on New Year's Day. But really, if we are committed Christians, we should not just leave what we hear in church there, and then when we walk out, we do something else. So it's a challenge for all of us. And so really, what we need to do, what I hope all Ugandans, especially those in leadership positions, will do, is to reflect on these important messages which our spiritual leaders have given us.
All right.
And do something about it.
Listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight, religious leaders seek a new direction for the country. What direction do they want the country to take? And are their views likely to be taken on by government and the general public? Our guest tonight, Ambassador Harold Acemah, political scientist, consultant, and retired diplomat, and Mr. Robert Lugolobi, Executive Director, Transparency International, Uganda chapter. You'll be able to call in and contribute to this discussion later. Right now, though, you can send in your text messages as we go along. They'll be read on air before we leave this place. On I'll read out the numbers in the time cards, but for the time being, type the word Spectrum in your phone browser, your message, question, or comment, and send it to 7197. That is Spectrum message body address. Send it to 7197. Mr. Lugolobi, one of the messages by Bishop Chitoru Walira, Bishop of Namirembe, he says, if this nation Uganda were a building, it is full of cracks and its roof is in a sorry state. We need to renew our covenant. Why are they using such strong words, these people, men of the cloth?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think there is generally a desperation is setting in. At first, things like misery, things like corruption, things like injustice were academic debates, and we used to participate in Makerere University, and were not visible, so clearly visible on the streets of Kampala or in our homesteads. But now we see that the effects of, to me, I want to point out the effect of mismanagement. You know, when you are talking about mismanagement, it's not only in economics, but in all spheres of life, has really now gone to the root of the society, the family. So I think the clergy interacting with the people on a regular basis and also being part of the society, this is a public outcry everywhere that, you know, this, I agree with this, if this nation were a building, it is not foreign, but full of cracks, and the roof is in a sorry state. I would wish to imagine that the roof being talked about here is the people we have entrusted in governing. You know, a roof protects the building from rain. Now, if the develop crack, then it means it's leaking. Whatever you have there is going to be destroyed. It's going to be destroyed, and that's why the moral fabric of Ugandans has gone down, because like now it is very easy to listen to conversation when it says stealing is okay, everybody is stealing, you know, don't you see everybody is stealing and is still maintaining. So that's the problem. It's not actually now an individual, it is a system that is coming and that is entrenching. That's why you say the analogy of a building, which is a country, which can be a family, which can be, but with a roof which is in a solid state, reflects that the people inside who are sheltering into that roof are not safe. So a lot of problems are coming. They can be political, they can be economic, they can be social, because there is no guidance. The young people now don't see many mentors, many people they admire and say, oh, I think you can live a life of serving others without grabbing. Power means grabbing. Being in government means getting rich. extremely rich at the expense of the poor, and you don't feel, that you have done something wrong, and young people are admiring to see that you also get an opportunity and grab like so and so, and be protected by those who are grabbing. It is something which is a sorry state. I would agree with the bishop, and something must be done. And I agree with you. Say we need to sit back and get back to the basics and say, how do we move from here? That's where reconciliation is required now. So searching and say, this is Uganda, we're not going to go out of Uganda tomorrow. What can we do to really set up, to start afresh? Because at one time we are moving. What has caused all this?
Right.
That Lugolobi can go, but still the system has been contaminated with the thinking of grabbing, and nothing happened to the grabbers.
And you say the young people don't have mentors to look to. Maybe the mentors have become tormentors in the end. And you also say that economic mismanagement and corruption are the two ills. So if these men repent, they get back to managing the economy, well, things will be better.
Yeah, I think what we are talking about is that we need to get back to the basics. We need to know that this is a country. We need to know that we are competing with other countries, so that we know that when we mismanage our resources, then we are selling our people into slavery. That's why you see people celebrating and giving, going to the church to give testimony that they have gotten a visa to go to US in order to clean toilets.
To escape from pain.
To escape from the pain. That's not the way forward. So we need to believe and tune our mind to know that we are in a competitive world. Uganda is blessed with resources. If we manage our small resources we have, they have the multiplier effect, and everybody may not be equal, but everybody will have a share. What is our investment in public good? What we call public good. For some of us who use taxis, if we went to these taxis, we see that there is we don't have that feeling of what can we do to help other Ugandans live a decent life.
Right. Of course, you're talking about Uganda being in competition with other nations. They used to say we are the food basket of the region, maybe potentially, but Tanzania is trying to explore its own potential. And Sudan, I think South Sudan yesterday was calling for investors in its own agriculture. And they have much more arable land than Uganda can ever hope to have. Ambassador Acemah, how serious is corruption as an ill? How far can it go to destroy an economy or even a country?
It is very serious. You see, the human cost of the corruption in Uganda. In fact, corruption in Uganda is now systemic, it's endemic, it's rampant. It can be worse. The World Bank has estimated that Uganda loses $500 million, $500 million annually through corruption. That is enough to pay all the teachers the salaries they want, the doctors. It's enough to make sure the drugs in a hospital, all the hospitals have got all the drugs. And this is money which goes into a few people's pockets. You see, it is not just a crime against humanity, it is a sin against God. These people are doing this, will never get away with it. They may get away with it here on earth, but
they'll burn in hell.
I don't want to say that, but
well, that's what you're saying.
No,
with it
all God will damn that. But you see, two things. What is the root cause of the malaise we're in today? I want to suggest two things. One is the erosion of the Christian values of this country. The values,
religious values, let's broaden it.
I'll come to that. This country is a predominant Christian country. Secondly, even the Islamic values. This is the Quran. I've read the Quran in English. The Quran does not sanction what is happening in this country. Both the Christian and Islamic values have been eroded. Even our own African traditional values, where I come from in West Nile, stealing was unthinkable. In fact, my parents used to leave all their crops in the field. Nobody would touch, not even pick a cob of maize. When we were kids, they used to tell us, if you take anything from anybody without their permission, something will happen to your mother. You see, something to happen to your mother. There's nothing worse. So there were those taboos, killing people, all these evils you see in this country today, even in our own African traditional values, they were unacceptable. But as a Christian or a religious country, really, we have those values which we cherish have been eroded. So this is where the message of the religious leaders is so important, because we need to go back to, and I feel sorry for the young people. At least I know something is wrong. There are a lot of young people who don't even know that something is wrong. You see, it's like somebody swimming in a dirty pond. He assumes that all the ponds are like this. At least I know something is fundamentally wrong in Uganda. There are many people who don't seem to know, especially young people. They don't seem to know that something is fundamentally wrong. That Uganda is upside down. Now, the root cause, another root cause, is really a failure of leadership.
Failure of leadership.
A failure of leadership. Let me read something about from somebody whom I admire, who died recently, a former president of the Czech Republic, Václav Havel. He wrote a piece which is so interesting. Let me read something for you. He says that it is my profound conviction that the world requires enlightened, thoughtful politicians who are bold and broad-minded enough to consider things that lie beyond the scope of their influence in both space and time. But this is the more important one. We need politicians who are able to rise above their own power interests or the particular interests of their parties or states. In Uganda, their clans or tribes, in accordance with the fundamental interests of humanity and the nation. You see, what we need today in Uganda, in Africa, let me not just say Uganda, in Africa, leadership, we had a few in the 60s. You see, the original crop of leaders in Africa, people like Kwame Nkrumah.
Yes.
People like even Sekou Touré in his earlier days.
Sekou Touré, Julius Nyerere.
Julius Nyerere.
Milton Obote.
Yes. Kenneth Kaunda.
Yes. Patrice Lumumba.
You see, Patrice Lumumba. You see that crop leadership today, it doesn't exist. Mandela, yes.
Idealists.
Yes. People who
selfless men and
selfless Pan-Africanist nationalists. Nyerere died, he didn't have a house. The house where Maria Nyerere is the widow. This was built by CCM after Nyerere died. 1971, when Idi Amin overthrew Milton Obote, he had no house.
Milton Obote had no house.
His house in Kololo was a gift from Adivani. It was a wedding present to Milton Obote in '63 when he got married. Obote had no house. You see, that type of leadership. Today, people build palaces. You see, these things, you leave them here. You're not going to go to heaven or hell with them, for goodness sake.
This is Spectrum on Radio 1. We're going for a break. We'll be back.
John, Mike and I, we go back a bit. We knew John at the beginning, working for someone else. But he was different. He had vision, saw opportunities. He started working towards his goal, opened his own garage, and worked, learning the hard way. His reputation spread. Trust, consistency, quality. Soon people were coming to him from all parts. He made himself and his whole street prosper, and also helped friends, seeing potential in people and helping them on. But John never shouts about all his success. He's just who he is. Special.
So here's to men like John, who make a difference, who enjoy Nile Special, the rich, satisfying taste from the source. Nile Special. You've earned it.
Not for sale to persons under 18.
Let the sunlight in.
Good morning, sunshine of my life. You look happy today.
I am. I came in here and I saw there was a whole pile of washing to do.
But I thought you didn't like doing the washing.
No, I love it. Anything else you need washed?
Sunlight 2-in-1 with added fabric softener. Smells so good, you want to use it again and again.
Let the sunlight in.
Sunlight 2-in-1. Sunlight clean, sunlight fresh.
Sunlight in. Happiness is all around. Let the sunlight in.
Just like an uncut diamond is brought to life by unmatched skill and dedication, only our brewmaster holds the secret to crafting a crystal malt lager. Under the exacting international standards at Nile Breweries, he uses only the finest, most carefully selected grains of roasted crystal malt and sets in motion the delicate process of releasing their full roast. The result is a world-class beer with a fresher aroma, a richer golden color, and a maltier taste.
Nile Gold Crystal Malt Lager. Beyond an ordinary malt.
Not for sale to persons under 18.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90 is brought to you by Stanbic Bank.
Welcome back. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight, religious leaders seek a new direction for the country. What direction do they want the country to take, and are their views likely to be taken on by government and the general public? Our guests tonight, Ambassador Harold Acemah, political scientist, consultant and retired diplomat, and Mr. Robert Lugolobi, Executive Director of Transparency International, the Ugandan chapter. You'll be able to call him later or send text messages. Type the word Spectrum in your phone browser. Send your message with your name and address to 7197. That is Spectrum message body. Send it 7197. Mr. Lugolobi, how do we get out of this trap?
Yeah, thank you very much. First, I agree that there is erosion, but I don't just the erosion of morals.
Yes.
I don't want to fix it to Christian or Islamic morals.
Yes.
The erosion of our values as people, as Ugandans believing, because there is a study which was made. Denmark, there are very few Christians or religious people, but the corruption is low. In Uganda, we have 90-something% of people confessing to be religious, but the corruption is almost everywhere. So the belief that you are human beings, they love one another, but also growing when you have a responsibility. As a nation, what are our values? As a nation, what is our target? So that we instill that thing.
Well, our nation may God uphold our
those are slogans. And I don't want, that's why I don't call Uganda, and I don't emphasize being a Christian. Those are slogans which are being talked about without entering into the minds of the people. We have not done it. When you say for God and our country, do people believe that? If we are believing that, probably we will not be seeing what we are seeing today.
Right.
I mean, every person who comes to the office, he gets a Bible and swear.
They swear.
Yeah, they swear, and then, but at the end of the day, it is a piece, say like any other book, it has not come into the mind, because Christianity or Islam demands that you walk the talk.
Right.
Which is the other way side. To me, my prescription for the problem we are having is to go back to the young people and reconstruct ourselves. We reconstruct the love for our country.
Well, how do you do it?
The education system. Like now when you are going through the
patriotism.
Create
a patriotism just somewhere.
Yeah, without being political.
Create a patriotism there's maybe somewhere in State House. Is that what you're saying?
Not in the State House. Not in the State House. It has to be our responsibility. Patriotism. No, not patriotism which is inclined to a party or an individual. Patriotism where we are teaching people to love their country and to work for their country.
Maybe in the Ministry of Ethics and Integrity.
Yeah, so that we build into it. It cannot be either this group or religious, whatever. They have to be contributing. But at the end of the day, it requires every Ugandan to start working for Uganda and knowing that getting rich as an individual and leave amidst the poor will not have. I had a very bitter argument on Thursday. I was coming back into the country and I met two friends of mine who are traders, and we were at Entebbe airport, and this is what they said, because they know me and anti-corruption. They say corruption is good. I asked him, why is it good? He said corruption allows you to have a powerful car, Others, and even if they are potholes, you can drive. Corruption helps you to get money that you can go to Colorado Hospital and be treated. But I told them those are just individuals. What about others? They said, don't care about others. Are you living in comfort? That's the belief. And they were waiting, and they said it was an argument until when I realized these are very close friends of mine.
Are they young or old men?
They are in 40s.
Yes.
So I realized that moral decay that does not see people, beyond yourself.
Right. Ambassador Acemah, where do we go? How we get out of that?
That is called individualism. It's a new phenomenon. You see, corruption is a new phenomenon. In fact, corruption basically has got out of hand in the last 25 years. When I joined the civil service, 1970, and I was on campus in 60s, there was no corruption in this country. The passport office used to be under Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
The passport office?
Yes. And later it became an area where there's a lot of, you've seen immigration.
Yes.
A lot of corruption in those places. But you didn't need to pay anybody anything to get service. The Uganda police was one of the most respected, one of the most professional services in this country. In fact, if you try to bribe a policeman, they will arrest you. You see, people had their dignity. The first time I came face to face with corruption was in Ethiopia, when I went to work in the Uganda embassy. I'd never seen corruption in this country.
Which year was that?
This was 1972. 71. You see, corruption in Uganda is elite generated. You see, when you say corruption is everywhere, it's not true. You see, the corruption is here in Kampala. It is the politicians. It is the big people. It is even a particular region, more or less. You see, corruption is not something anybody is born with. And
no one is born a thief.
Nobody is born a thief. To answer your question, if you want to rid Uganda of corruption, it must start from the top. You see, the example, this is where I said that our problem is a failure of leadership. Why would a leader of this kind protect people whom Parliament, the national Parliament, the people representing Parliament, have identified, saying, these people have a case to answer. Today, in fact, one of the messages which the Christian leaders, the church leaders have sent, that people whose names have been mentioned should step aside, not even resign. In fact, maybe they should resign. You see, in the British, in the parliamentary democracy, the system which we have inherited from the British, when your name is mentioned, you must take what they call political responsibility, even if it is your subordinates who have done it, even if you are not directly involved. If I am a minister of foreign affairs, my permanent secretary or one of the senior people has done something unethical or wrong, I take responsibility because I'm a political leader. I'm the leader of that, that ministry. So the request, the demand from Parliament that some ministers who have been implicated, whether it is Chogam, whether it is other scandals, should step aside is something which we should take for granted. Now, when people refuse and then they get protection, you wonder. You see, this is what makes it difficult to read this kind of corruption. You see, the example, if you're a leader, the example that you set will make all the difference. When people know that Edmond, the leader in Radio 1, is not corrupt, you're supposed to not be corrupt. But once they know that he's eating, it makes it easy. You see, you have no moral authority to tell people, please, I can't tolerate corruption here, when they know you are the most corrupt person.
Mr. Lugolobi, is that an analysis you agree with? Do you think corruption began in the last 20 or so years?
Of course, whoever reads the Bible knows that corruption is as old as humankind.
Well, let's talk about the Ugandan.
Yeah, I mean, that's the analysis. Because
let's try to narrow it to
Uganda, because I don't want to believe we had the Anti-Corruption Act, Prevention of Corruption Act 1972.
Go on.
Now, it means that those who are thinking, we are realizing that there was a problem starting. Probably would say corruption has intensified and has grown to this level. Now, but we also have to remember that poor people get the leader they deserve.
Yes.
That's a famous one.
It's not true.
Yeah. Because
it's an arguable one.
Yeah, it's an arguable because the leaders are part of the society. Now, if the society has embraced corruption during election, they go and
so it should be left to
get one. No, it should not be left. But I'm just showing you. I'm just trying to tell you that the problem is bigger and actually beyond an individual and so few individuals.
So the solution?
The problem has come. The solution has to lie within the people of Uganda. First of all, I talked about the values and the morals. We talk about holding our leaders accountable. When we say corruption is only in Kampala, I've gone to the village. May have gone to a village where the LC chairman, in order to sell land, in order to sign just on your agreement, get something.
Well, it's a fee.
No, it is because there's not a seat. It's not a seat. So you find that you look at it small. Corruption started as a tip. A tip, then a commission, then people started demanding it. So if you are to weed out corruption, you have to really understand corruption in actually a bigger perspective.
Help us to understand
it. Yeah, the perception that it has come a time when people believe that they cannot live without any kind of injection from outside, which is not part of their income. Now, it is so spread that you know that even in the homes, we are paying policemen on the streets when your kid is in the vehicle, and you just go in order not to be disturbed. You don't have maybe a reflector, and they say this is 5,000. What are you teaching your children? Those children you see being taught that way, when they get into the office, they don't have that moral
compunction.
Yes, in order to behave different. Haven't you had Mr. Kizito where parents and teachers and UNEB are conniving to leak exams?
Yes.
Now, that also come to a single leader? No, it is a system. It is a breakdown of our values that will not allow a teacher. I'm a professional teacher.
Yes.
I know what it means. If a teacher cheats, then the products are going to be cheats. So it has gone that far.
Ambassador Acemah.
You see, Edmond,
before we hear from the listeners.
Yes. Since we are trying to assess and analyze messages from our religious leaders, let me just quote something for you from Prophet Isaiah.
Very briefly, yes.
Very briefly. It's from Isaiah chapter 6. This is the one of those fantastic chapters in Isaiah.
Yes.
In verse 9 he says, you see, now God wanted to send him with a message. So verse 9 says that, so God told him to give the people this message.
Yes.
And the message is, no matter how much you listen, you will not understand. No matter how much you look, you will not know what is happening. Then he said to me, this is now God saying to Isaiah, make the minds of these people dull, their ears deaf, their eyes blind, so that they cannot see or hear or understand.
And the interpretation of
if they did, they might turn to me and be healed. You see, this is what I see in Uganda and Africa. You see, there are people who have shut up their minds. Unfortunately, many of them also young people. And it's not their fault, because it is the environment in which many of our young people have grown up in is so corrupted, is so filthy, that they don't know what the truth is. You see, this, again in scripture says that you know the truth will set you free.
Yes.
Young man, unless you know the truth,
you will not be a free man.
You will not be a free man.
Let's hear from the listeners. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight, religious leaders seek a new direction for the country. What direction do they want the country to take? And are their views likely to be taken on by government and the general public? One of the messages, Right Reverend Wilberforce Chicholuwarira, Bishop of Namirembe, says, if this nation Uganda were a building, it is full of cracks and its roof is in a sorry state. You might tell us whether you agree or you don't agree with those kind of statements. All religious leaders seem to have a similar tone. Our number 0414-348-111, 031-226-0390, 031-226-1390. Yes, hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. Your name?
This is Msoga bin Charazinga.
Hello, we can hardly hear you.
This is Msoga bin Charazinga.
Yes.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year in the future.
Thank you, sir. Same to you.
First of all, I will begin with the gentleman who said that he first saw corruption in Ethiopia in 1971. That man is corrupt because there was corruption in the 60s. Kids used to get bribes before they released tax defaulters in the 60s. Where was that gentleman? 2. Corruption is a big thing. Theft, defaulting, and so those are subsets of corruption. So corruption has been there. Some people want to exchange corruption with theft, which is a small thing compared to corruption. By saying that there was no corruption before, and by trying to insinuate that corruption is in a particular region, that gentleman is being very corrupt. I think that man is very, very corrupt. Thank you.
Spectrum, hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir, your name?
Good evening.
Good evening to you. Hello.
And good evening, the guest in the studio. My name is Owere. First of all, I want to agree with the clergy. And I also want to say that one thing I'm happy about is that the clergy have actually echoed a very, very important message this Christmas. And I would like all Ugandans to agree and we try our level best to reduce corruption, because with the corruption, all what we are experiencing, especially equity, cannot be there. We need to put our wallets together, share it equitably, make sure all the things which are supposed to be for the people of Uganda are done. I'm very happy now that the president of Uganda, His Excellency Yoweri Museveni, is trying now his level best to distance himself from corruption. And he has done it by telling the ministers actually to step aside. I know there are other issues that he is trying one slowly by slowly. What we need to do now is to help him and help this country. I'm happy to hear from Charazinga for a very long time. For God and my country, and I wish you a Happy New Year.
Spectrum, hello? 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 Please don't go away before you speak to us. Our number 0414-348-111. Yes, hello?
Ken from Iganga.
Your name again?
Ken from Iganga.
Yes, Ken.
And I'm happy to greet all the people in the studio. I'll go straight to the point. I agree that corruption might be becoming a way of life in Uganda and other third world countries. I heartily disagree that it is a recent phenomenon. What may be recent is our ability to recognize corruption thanks to the freedoms that are around. I know it for a fact that one head of state of Uganda took over the country when there was a probe in his involvement in gold from Zaire. That is corruption. But I'm also concerned about the way the message is coming across from your guests in the studio. We might end up having a situation where everybody rich is labeled corrupt without being able to separate those who have got truthful gains, taking advantage of the freedoms, again, the peace, the explorations that are there. And we are just the hate in the message is what I'm worried about. Saying one region is very corrupt. Please do not judge, for you are also being judged. Have a good day.
Spectrum, hello?
Hello,
Yes, your name?
this is Nachinji Bettina.
Nachinji Bettina, yes?
Yeah, that man is not only corrupt, but dead.
Crying in the background. Spectrum, hello?
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, your name?
My name is Paddy Kayondo.
Paddy, yes?
Yes, I do want to recommend those guys who are in the studio, but I want to disagree with the ambassador. Actually, corruption has not begun today. It is something that is as old as our nation. It's only that of recent, the media is so good, is so open, everyone can talk about corruption, and because we are fighting it, that's why we can now be able to actually know that we have corruption in Uganda. Another thing also, when it comes to the religious leaders, some of them don't even have more to talk about corruption. They should begin with their institutions. The church also is not an institution, they should check it also. The corruption is an evil that is eating up our society, and we should fight it from our homes. Everyone is supposed to take part in the corruption. However, the government is doing whatever it does, and we pray that all the Ugandans should fight hard so that we get this evil called corruption, because it is a moral issue, and we need to fight it right from its root. I thank you.
Spectrum, hello? Hello? Okay. All right, let's get back to the studio, right?
Well, let me thank all the callers for their comments and questions. Maybe I wasn't very clear. What I said was that what I said was systemic and endemic corruption. You see, Scripture says that all have sinned and come. You see, we are all sinners. So, in a way, because we're all sinners, corruption started from the Garden of Eden. You can argue that. But what we're discussing is the systemic corruption in Uganda. We did not have systemic corruption. I think anybody who has been in Uganda since independence will bear me out. Systemic and endemic corruption. This is what we're discussing. $500 million goes down the drain every year. It's bigger than the budget in the 60s. In fact, I think up to 70s, our budget was not even that big. So this is what we're talking. We're not talking about petty corruption. Okay? It's like stealing. Stealing has been there from time immemorial, but this is stealing today. People stealing in the billions. Somebody getting 146 billion shillings for nothing.
Compensation.
You know,
Lost
this is what I'm talking about. You see, the people who are, to some extent I agree with them. We're all sinners. I'm a sinner. You a sinner. Maybe you're not.
I am.
So for me, I'm the first one to admit that, I was born a sinner because I'm a descendant of Adam and Eve. But what we're talking about is systemic and endemic corruption. I'm telling you, when I never saw it in Uganda in the 60s and 70s. What of course all of us must play our part. You see, although the corruption, I still insist the corruption is mainly at the upper levels. The really grand scale corruption, what would a peasant in the village? You are talking about an LC1 chairman. Yes. But they're not paid, for goodness sake. Why should not they get something? Somebody got some bicycles. Somebody, they never even got them. Somebody ate all the money here. Huh? So they have my sympathy. In fact, they should have been paid for the service they're rendering. They're doing a free service.
At least they should have got those bicycles.
Absolutely.
We wanted bicycles went to someone who deals with coconuts. Mr. Lugolobi.
Yeah, thank you very much, moderator. First of all, we need to know that corruption is a moral problem. It grows. Now, when it has grown, don't think that it's like a plant. It's a small tree. If you don't weed out when it is young, it grows and then it becomes visible. So corruption has been there, and the problem, it has never been punished in this country. Successful regimes never punished those who were, so it encouraged many others. Secondly, I think it is very wrong and a wrong message to believe that LC1 chairperson should grab that 20,000. Because it means that if he is now in charge of $1 billion, he will steal it.
Maybe it's a tax.
Yes, but not a tax. A tax has to be receipted.
Oh,
now, what we have to know, when we are reconstructing our moral values, we need to call a sin. He used the word sin. Sin is a sin.
Yes.
And if something is criminal, it is criminal irrespective of the amount. Now, the small thieves today, what we call petty corruption, are going to be the big thieves tomorrow. But I want to address one from Kenny, which is saying, the discussion we're talking about now, there is a temptation that we will look at every person who's rich and termed as a corrupt. In our discussion, nothing like that either. Because we know that very genuine people. We are also not poor, by the way. I don't declare myself as a poor person. So we are not against the rich.
No.
But the rich at the expense of the poor,
yes,
and at the expense of the poor, at the disadvantage of the poor, is evil.
Exactly.
And that's what we are talking about. Don't use your office to enrich. But if you are innovative, and you say, like now we have chapel, we are struggling, and so you come up with a solution, and you get more money. Then, even in economics, there is what they call the trickle-down policy.
Yes.
I mean, people will benefit from, as you make the wealth, others, you are also spreading the wealth, because you will get workers. But now we have rich people who are grabbing ready money. Actually, the ambassador talks about World Bank estimating. There is another study which shows about 900. We are getting 900 million.
There's been growth.
Yes,
it's growth. The growth, the old figure was 500 million.
Yes, 500. Now it's 900.
If the economy is not growing, at least
corruption is growing.
At least corruption is growing.
We're estimating that, we actually not estimating, we are losing much more than what we get in aid.
Sure.
Yes. To go. Thank you very much, Ambassador Harold Acemah. Very distressing facts there.
It is.
Thank you, Ambassador Harold Acemah, political scientist, consultant, and retired diplomat. Thank you for coming and share your experience with us. Mr. Robert Lugolobi, Executive Director of Transparency International Ugandan Chapter. Transparency is the global group that fights corruption worldwide, as I say.
May I wish our listeners a happy new year next Sunday, 2012.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond. The Spectrum will be back tomorrow. Up next, though, is the news in English.
Experience financial growth and development. Simply open a FINA Contract Saver account with only 50,000 shillings and enjoy up to 15% interest.